Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having us here today. We're obviously very excited to be back in front of you. And my name's Kirsten Ciro. I'm a new face to everyone here in the room. I'm our Eastern Region Aviation Design Leader. Been with the company 18 years and part of it in aviation and other parts of our business. So very nice to meet all of you, and thank you again for having us. So I know a lot of you are familiar with CNS. We've had a long history with the county and also working at the airport in the past. But in case there's any new folks here today, just a couple quick facts about us. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, headquartered in Syracuse, New York, so just over an hour away. We have full service capabilities, so in addition to all our aviation practice capabilities, we have environmental, we have facilities, you name it. We have the folks that can do it. We're about 500 strong, which is a good size firm, but also we still feel like we're small enough to be family friendly, employee-owned, small type of business. So very active in our communities that we work in. That's one of our big core values. And again, another thing, our aviation practice, of that 400 to 500 that we fluctuate at, 100 to 150 personnel just solely dedicated to aviation work around the country. We are a national practice around the country, so we have a lot of depth and experience that we can draw from, and we're excited about that.
Are these in-house employees, or does this also include subcontractors?
No, this is all in-house.
Okay,
Yeah, we have about 100 in our aviation group, and then we have another facilities aviation practice that fluctuates, between 30 to 40 people. So, yep, all in-house. This is really just to talk about how we work with our clients and our airports that we work with. It's really a collaborative process, and just really want to emphasize that between working with the steering committee at the airport, the aviation staff, and working with the county, and again working with CNS. One thing that I want to bring up that's a change from our proposal, our quals package that we submitted, is we've made a change on the team with bringing Jim Dolan on board to CNS. I believe I mentioned that in the cover letter of the quals package that we expected him to join the team. He has now in fact joined our team, and so just wanted to be clear that Jim is going to be our contract manager, client manager for this on-call. And again, I think Jim is, if you don't know Jim's a Norwich guy. He was born and raised here. He's got a lot of great passion for the area and connection to the region. He comes to us with over 30 years of experience, much of that in aviation in New York State. So we're very excited to have him on board. In addition, many of you know Chris Brubach, who worked with you in the past, and Chris is still going to be supporting the efforts at the airport as well from a technical lead standpoint. And really we feel the two of them together are really a 1-2 punch for you. So again, from a professional standpoint, an ethical standpoint, didn't feel comfortable at the time, since he wasn't with us yet, to actually put him on that org chart yet, but that is what we're proposing, and that is what we know is best for you guys. So with that, I will leave it to Chris and Jim to talk a little bit more about our approach.
Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, as Kirsten mentioned, I've been with CNS from 2001, and I worked with Shenango County and at the airport for 11 of those years, from about 2001 to 2012. I think we've developed a good, effective working relationship with Don and a lot of the folks in the county, purchasing department. We know the county administrative steps to get projects complete and out for bid, and the administrative actions that are required. We have a vast knowledge of the airfield facilities, so I've got all the as-built records for the projects that were completed since, I would say, the early 80s. We know where all the cables are, the pipes, everything at the airport. And as you all know, the facility is really not located in the best as far as environmental conditions. There's a peat bog, which is impeding, could possibly impede construction. There's wetlands. There's the Shenango River with the floodplains. And we have records, and we've done studies on most of those items. So that's very important, the history and the knowledge, so we don't repeat costly studies. We've got that information right at hand, and really that would go into play with what development is proposed. As far as funding, this is just a quick slide. We did a little research and noticed that over the last 5-year term here at Shenango, there was just over $1 million in grants. All those were federal grants with a local match of about 5%. And from our work and asking with the state, I think there was nothing from the aviation mowing equipment that was just about on the 5-year limit, but nothing else. Funded success with CNS pre-2012 was about double that. It looks like about $11.5 million in federal money. And New York State aviation grants, we had a lot of success with that, about $424,000.
What was the span there?
Yeah.
The span was from the start of the AIP program when we started at Shenango. That was about 25 years on the CNS side.
Okay.
Comparing dollars to dollars, that's not adjusted for inflation, so it's
No,
hard
I
to
just
compare.
wondered, you know,
it's about,
pre-2012, what you're talking about.
yep, about 25 years.
Good question.
Okay.
But per annual, it's about double. Good question. All right, Jim.
All right, thanks, Chris. Good morning, and thanks again for having us here. It's good to be back in Norwich and Shenango County. And what I really wanted to point out is that a good consultant is a lot more than an engineer and a planner and even a group of construction professionals. A good consultant needs to be a partner and an advisor, and that means that we do a lot more than just get ourselves concerned with what's in the backlog and what projects are on the plate. A good consultant needs to ask questions, and a lot of them, but maybe more importantly, a good consultant needs to do a lot of listening. And that's what I propose CNS does, and that's how we start out, as a good foundation of a great relationship between the county, the airport, and your consultant. I'll come to your planning and economic development committee meetings, I'll come to your steering committee meetings, and we'll even do things like go with the county and the airport to see the DOT and talk about how your grants have shaped up, and did you get a state grant, did you not, and that kind of stuff. So, and I do bring a little bit of a unique perspective. I've been a general aviation airport manager for the last 5 years out in Canandaigua, New York. So that gives me the ability to come and ask some questions and help build that foundation. And some of those questions can even be a little tough. For instance, has the county done an RFP, request for proposal on your aviation fuel services to make sure you're getting the best service and the best prices? We know there's AvFuel, there's Ascent, World Fuel, there's Epic. Maybe put an RFP out there and see if you're getting the best service and the best quality that you can. Do you have a set of minimum standards that protects both the airport and county and the tenants who are on the airport? That kind of perspective and that kind of stuff. Are you marketing your airport? Maybe there's an opportunity to sit and talk about partnering with some local businesses. I don't know, NBT or the Country Club. You have kind of a premier country club here in Shenango County, and is there an opportunity to work with them and advertise in things like the AOPA Journal, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, that kind of stuff. Just take a fresh look at things and see what's out there that maybe hasn't been pursued before. And the other thing I wanted to drive home is that we really consider ourselves a local firm. Kirsten mentioned we're an hour and 15 minutes away. We're in Syracuse. I'm a local guy, and it would be really good to come back and work with Norwich and Shenango County and the airport again. Grants and projects. What we want to do is focus not on what's important to CNS, but what are the projects that are important to the county and are important to the airport with an eye toward revenue. general aviation airports in general need revenue. So is your fuel equipment up to speed? Could we get a grant there? Do you need new hangars? That kind of stuff. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a second. The other thing is the trust fund. I understand the idea of limiting the use of the trust fund, hopefully to just the interest. That was the intent, I believe, and that's what we would want to see maintained, is using the trust fund interest and not the principal, not dipping into that principal. And by the way, if you want to stockpile or save up your non-primary entitlement, your $150,000 a year that you get from the FAA for a couple of years and put it toward a bigger project, absolutely. It's okay to do that. We're here to make sure that the notification gets to the FAA on time, to make sure that they hear, hey, okay, Norwich, Shenango County is gonna save their 2018 non-primary entitlement, and then we'll take it from there. And then a measured, reasonable approach is what we have in mind for Shenango County Lieutenant Warren Eaton Airport, and that's take a pace for projects, take a pace for development that makes sense for the county and makes sense for the airport. So, next slide. Key projects to me and to us means the projects that are important to the county and are important to the airport, not what matters to the backlog at CNS. We looked at your ACIP that you had included with the RFQ, and we list them there. But we would want to sit down here with you and take a fresh look at it and get your input. And that's what we're here for, is to offer input, not to drive it. Okay. And the AWAS, I just want to mention quickly. We can get to a little bit of this more during the Q&A, but I have some information, some thoughts to offer on doing that weather system upgrade, and maybe take a look at how to fund that. And then finally, what this slide represents is in the transportation bond, or the transportation bill that was just passed by Congress, there's an extra, a supplemental $1 billion included in that bill for the airport improvement program, and that money is available at 0% local match. Okay, that means it's effectively free money. But Lieutenant Warren Eaton is one of only 7 general aviation airports in New York State that meets the eligibility under that program to be funded, to have projects funded through the FAA at 0% local match. So this represents a huge opportunity. And if you're going to pursue a runway extension or rehab, fencing, obstruction removal, any of that stuff that's AIP eligible, then what I would say is let's sit together and take a look at that, and maybe there's a way that we could even bundle those projects together. And what that amounts to is what I refer to as economy of scale. You get the fencing taken care of, you get your runway taken care of, if that's what's desired by the county and the airport. You need security fence. If we can put those things together, and you can do it at 0% local match, then that's a win-win. And so that's the perspective that CNS offers to the county. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Kirsten.
Sure.
Let's go on before you,
Yes.
those projects you mentioned, are those AIP eligible?
Runway certainly is. Obstruction removal is. Fencing is. So let me see if I can kind of sum it up in this way. The FAA will pay for anything on your airfield, safety, infrastructure, that kind of stuff, that is not revenue producing.
And you can convince them that that's applicable.
We're already certified as
You can say
qualified.
to
we're
the
designated.
FAA, yeah,
No.
these are eligible for this grant,
Yes.
and push that.
Yes.
Thank you
Sure.
very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
I have a question too. Since you're Irish, what do we do with the peat bog?
Well, my inclination would be to use it for energy to make some kind of alcohol. No, we do know that that's there, that that's an issue. CNS has a great history there with understanding all the things on the airfield that Chris mentioned. as far as in what's out there and what needs to be addressed environmentally and as far as the.
On a more serious note, the New York
Yes.
State funding.
Yes.
What is your recent success been obtaining that for other clients?
Very successful. In fact, we have a slide coming up that speaks directly to that.
Okay.
But
Wait for it.
all right.
Sure, no problem. So that's my segue, I guess. So a couple of value-added things that we provide for our customers, and one of them is our grants administration support. We actually have 3 full-time staff members dedicated strictly to aviation grants. They're not accountants that send out bills and then try to get cash flowing. They're strictly dedicated to both administering those AIP grants, working with your staff, working with the New York ADO to get those drawdowns, to get that cash flowing, so that everyone can get paid on time and so on and so forth. They handle all of that. They handle all the grant applications. They handle all of the pre-applications. We do all of that and have for 20 years. So in addition to that, we also help with grant writing. So that's something that they collaborate with our client managers, and so they can help write justifications to get those funds for those types of projects, and work with not just the FAA, but we've had a lot of success with New York State aviation grants. There's a list there, 50 New York State grants, totaling 20 million since the program began.
When was that?
When was the program? Do you know?
1999.
That's actually in the last 5 years.
Okay. Oh, that's in the last 5
Yeah.
years. Apologies.
What kind of fees are associated with the assistance in grant writing?
Just, you know, we usually put in per project a budgetary amount. It's not a lot. It's usually just on an hourly basis.
Yeah, we do that ahead of the actual grant award with the FAA, so we do that on our time. And then if the grant comes through, we get reimbursed. But generally, it's not much, probably a couple days of effort.
So it's a
to do it.
contingency.
Yes,
So
we
it's-
we do it at risk per se for all
Okay.
our clients.
Yes. And that's, I'm strictly speaking of the grants administration for the FAA AIP grants. A lot of those New York State Aviation Capital grants, we're doing many of that pro bono, recognizing
We like that.
it helps our customers, and then it also hopefully gets us another design job.
It's good for business.
It's great, yeah, it's great.
Got it.
So, and we, you know, at the Upstate Airport Improvement competition that the governor put out, I know it doesn't affect Shenango County, but, you know, we did an excellent job with that. We were, 3 of our airports out of the 5 were awarded money for that. So
That was
almost
an
100
additional
million.
question I had. I don't mean to jump in, but I'll
No,
forget it
go
because
for
I
it.
can't remember anything very well. What are the airports? What's upstate? I don't even know what's upstate. I mean, I don't even know, but, you know, they call places on the other side of the Hudson upstate. That's not
For the
my.
governor, I think it's anything north of the Bronx, Westchester County line.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the Southern Tier Thruway is, or the Southern Tier Casino is north of the Thruway. I'm just curious.
Right.
What were the airports?
The airports that won the competition.
The big one down there at the bottom.
Yep, Syracuse, Hancock, Ithaca was just announced 2 weeks ago.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Elmira Corning, Plattsburgh International, and Rochester.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of that for the governor, I mean, a lot of the revenue
It's an election.
goes down to the Port Authority airports, and it's a big,
But
big chunk.
of those airports, how many do you which ones do you oversee? Or-
Syracuse, Ithaca, and Plattsburgh.
Okay,
So, yeah, we wrote the.
You wrote the Syracuse Hancock Airport?
We wrote the
Their
application.
big-
office
it's a
is
big
on the
project.
driveway there, right?
right. Yeah, you could throw a
Syracuse
stone.
and Plattsburgh both were between 35 and 40 million. Ithaca's being awarded 15 million, but the total project's gonna be 22 when they add in the funding from the AIP.
So all those airports are more regional theme airports. What,
Yeah.
what kind of success have you had with, you know, small,
Small potato.
like our airport?
Absolutely, I think for your airport, we would definitely target those New York State Aviation Capital Grants. Those are largely disseminated to those smaller GA airports. The deadline is coming up in the end of June, so we're ready to hit the ground running if you are to help with that. But we've had a lot of success. We usually
Yeah.
have a pretty
Sydney,
good hit rate.
Oneonta.
So that
Yes.
program, there's $20 million available. Applications are due at the end of June. The maximum grant award is $1.5 million, and you can put in 2 applications and rate those, 1, 2, your priority. That's the program.
If you get a
20
grant-
million total available.
Yeah, if you are awarded a grant, you can only get one.
1.
But you put in, like Chris said, you're able to put in 2 applications per round, and this will be the fiscal year 2017 round. So they're a little bit behind with the program, but what Chris noted is important, that a couple of years ago, they raised the total amount of money available from 10 million to 20 million, and then they raised the per project cap to 1.5 million state share. So it's a pretty substantial grant program if you have projects in the wheelhouse that fit under that category.
Another one we should likely mention too, that didn't make this slide, but we help with those regional economic development, the CFA awards. Sometimes those can apply to needs at the airport, so we always look at that too, and that just came out as well, so I think the deadline's July for that.
Yeah, July.
So, but the program just came out a couple weeks ago for that.
You ever hook any money from Homeland Security?
You know, that's a good question, it's a good point.
Wasn't my idea.
They do run programs for the state Homeland Security, and sometimes there's money available for, different infrastructure needs, like anything that's security related. Signage, alarming, security systems for an airport, that kind of stuff. Yes, that's out there and that's available.
Is it common? Because you would think an airport and the infrastructure would support security issues.
It's, I don't know if I'd use the word common, but certainly is within the realm of possibility. And the thing that's nice about Lieutenant Warren Eaton is it's county run, and those grants have to be distributed at the county level.
Is that New York State grant, is that upfront funding by the county?
It's
It's a reimbursement
reimbursement
program,
program,
so,
thank you.
so you would upload your invoices, both construction and engineering, and get reimbursed through the state, through that grant.
So it's a continual reimbursement as
Yes.
the county makes expenditures?
Yes.
not-
Exactly.
So we have to allocate, then get it back, sort of. I think that was your question, wasn't
right,
it?
but it's
Yeah.
not all at once.
If you do the paperwork and there's a good relationship with the state and federal agencies, which we believe we have, the turnaround time to get that money back is pretty quick. You've just got to do the right steps, the right
New York,
paperwork,
pretty quick.
and follow the deadlines. It's very important.
And that all ties in again, we have the team that keep us all on track with that. We meet every couple weeks and go through all the deadlines for all the grants and make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. Any more questions on that before I move on, or we can obviously revisit that if we need to?
Well, since we're on funding, may I please go back to a point that was made earlier? You said that Lieutenant Warren Eaton was one of 7 airports
That's right.
qualifying for the supplemental funding, and so on.
Right.
Was Lieutenant Warren Eaton listed, or have you
Yes.
simply determined that we meet the eligibility criteria?
You were listed. You were
By
listed.
name?
By name. You were listed, and I can be happy to send that file to you guys.
Please.
It's basically designated you as a priority for the funding over all of the other airports that weren't listed. So there's 7 total in the state at the GA level.
Because if there's a delegation member we should thank, we haven't been notified to send them a thank you yet.
We did it based
Thanks for letting
on
us know.
region, like if you're in a micropolitan or a metropolitan region, you do not get priority funding, and Norwich just was.
We're
happens to
below
not be
micropolitan.
either.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we're happy to be informed because that is really good news, and we.
Right.
For how many years
And
have you
that-
been eligible for that?
That actually just was a
New.
stimulus this year.
New.
So it's not something that comes every year. It's, when
Right.
it does come, we've had it happen before in the past. It's always very exciting for everyone because it's a
And
lot
the
of additional
deadline,
funding.
the
in the
deadline is June to apply for this year?
No, the deadline for the state grants is June.
Okay, this is different.
This is, you have to have the projects approved and appropriated by September 2020. So you have some time for that, to plan for that.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
They don't have to be built by then, they just have to be.
We could actually be on
approved
time
and
for that.
the money,
Maybe. It's only 2 years.
Make sure you're on time.
There's a theory. No luck with that. Sister Hunt Marie had been absent 2 days of a 44 quarter and tardy 42. She never hit me, but I took that report card home, made up for it.
Okay, and last slide before we close, we also offer, we have a great team of professionals that do a lot of marketing support for us. Obviously, they work to help us win new work and things like that, but we also use them quite frequently to help our customers. So these are just some examples of different things that we've done over the years to help airports, GA airports. I know we've supported Lieutenant Warren Eaton Airport Day in the past and helped with signage and things for that. Mailers, flyers for fly-in pancake breakfast, you name it. We've done a lot of different things, so I just wanted to show that we can support in those efforts too, because understanding that that's not always something that can easily be funded at the county level, so.
We are open for funding for this year's airport day. Just throw it out there.
Okay.
June 9th.
June
Okay.
9th.
Alright, this is coming up quick.
And how many other airports are you doing in the region?
In the eastern region, we have about 25.
25.
Yeah, we're largely New York. New Jersey, we have some, a few in PA, Delaware.
How many of our category or type or micro, we're not even micro, right?
Sub-micro.
Yeah, where do we stand in size compared to the other ones you're working on?
I would say similar size to many of them. I mean, we obviously have some of the primary hubs as well that we mix in, but more general aviation than hub work.
Yeah, really our bread and butter is the GA facilities.
Yep, and we certainly recognize that. And it really does speak to us being just, a community engaged company to be working in all the communities that surround us, so. So with that, I'll bring it to a close before we go to Q&A. Again, a successful partnership with the county and the airport, I think, starts with strong, capable leadership and an experienced team, and we know we have that. We know we have the leadership in both Chris and Jim, and Jim's certainly passionate about the area and experienced, and again, brings that other perspective too, having sat in the airport manager's chair. So we're happy about that. We know we can have a seamless transition from your other consultant if that's what you choose to do. We've been in that situation before and it's gone well. Again, we're ready to hit the ground running. If you need help with the grants that are due in June, we can help you. Want to focus on value, and I think we've laid out a strong financial case as well today as to some of the ways that we can help you financially support the airport. And really what it comes down to is we worked with you for a long time. We haven't for the last 5 years, and that's unfortunate. But we really would like to get back to working together again, and we hope you feel the same way. So with that, I'll open it up and feel free to ask away.
I got just a quick question on the upfront charges for grant writing. Could you clarify that? Because it sounds like if you receive the project goes through, you are reimbursed by the grant itself. But if it's not, there are costs imposed on our airport.
No, so a lot of times we don't typically charge until we get the project. So we would charge for the work that we do to do the drawdowns, to get the financial stuff. A lot of that upfront work that we do as far as justifying the projects and things like that. Sometimes if there's if the project's already started or we have the contract underway, we can put that in there. But you'll notice when we provide our scope of services, there's a line in there for grants administration, so it's included in there.
Okay.
And I would say it's typically 40 hours per project, would you say? It's not a huge number. Yeah.
I have a question. I noticed that we have a roll of drawings that concluded the 2013 obstruction study for the airport under the CNSA. Yet that completed work was not mentioned in the proposal. Is there a reason why?
We did do the design and we put together the obstruction mapping. Right before our term was up, I met with all the landowners and we had a really good action plan to get those obstructions mitigated. We did the survey and determined where those obstructions were based on their current height and relatively old data. That survey data was old at that time, so the trees might have grown since then. We didn't include every project. We've done many projects at the airport over the last 25 years. We did the runway rehab, we built the parallel taxiway, put in the AWAS, the fencing, pretty much everything you see. So we didn't specifically target and include every project that we did.
Thank you. Follow-up question. How would CNS propose to succinctly and accurately bring the airport steering committee and this committee up to speed as to what really are the factual constraints and opportunities, the limitations that the airport is facing? What kind of process would you imagine conducting so that we all can more accurately get a grasp of what it is we've been facing all these years?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Let me open, Jim, and then I'll transfer you because you're going to be the guy. Sure. But what I would do, and I'll work with, I've got the knowledge. So I've got 15 years of experience. I've got all the files, know where everything is. And Jim is going to be moving forward that. I'm going to be his technical advisor. Right. So we're going to do a team effort, at least to begin with, for that knowledge transfer. Mm-hmm. Jim's going to come here. Jim's going to meet with you folks as often as if it's every steering committee for the first couple of months, first year, he's willing to do that. Mm-hmm. So we're going to sit down. We're going to go through the CIP. We're going to look at those projects. What are your priorities? Because things might shift with this new funding available. Right now the CIP is a little sparse. Maybe there's different priorities. Maybe you want to reanalyze those and see what avenues you want to go through for funding. There are a lot of environmental constraints. There sure are. It's in a tough spot. There's trees. It's in the valley, so there's trees on the hills, which is an issue. You got wetlands. You got potentially hazardous materials with the old Shenango batch plant down next to the swamp. There's a peat bog next to Mead Pond, which is, we drilled through there and found it was 40 feet deep. That's unheard of. We actually had to bring an expert from Canada to look at that and analyze, can we really build on top of this peat bog? And that's where the runway extension really stopped. There was good success there, but there's definitely ways that can be revisited to limit the amount of environmental disturbance, rethink the plan, and if you choose to get that done, to get to the 5,000 foot mark. But Jim, you want to, anything else to add on it?
No, I mean, you covered a lot of ground, and that's really good. But Chris brought up a good point that echoed what I mentioned during my section there of the presentation. I'll be at your committee meetings. I'll be at the steering committee, and I'll be at the planning economic development. If it's once a month, I'll be here. If it's once every 2 weeks, I'll be here. And that's where I learn the priorities and what's important to the airport and what's important to the county. And then I go back to Chris, or Chris is sitting there next to me, at least for the first few, so I get that intellectual property transferred over to me about the history. I'm the local guy. I know the county, I know Norwich, and I know the airport to a certain degree, but as far as all those projects that have taken place and the information that he just relayed, I need to get that in my head. So that's the plan, and then we take all the information, we move forward with you based on what I hear your priorities and what's important to the airport.
Did that answer your question about bringing everybody together?
Well, I understand about the projects going forward and all that, but as a base of understanding for all those involved, both this committee to which you're presenting right now and the airport steering committee, some of whom are here, we are struggling with really deeply understanding exactly why the thresholds at this position, exactly why, for example, the instrument approach was changed for 1.9 from a straight-in approach in 2015 to an angle. We don't know why. We would love to know why. Which obstacles are determining exactly what position we're in.
All those questions I can answer. I have the history on that. Pretty much the reason the displacements are what they are is for runway safety area. So that's a defined space in case a plane overshoots or veers off the runway, there has to be a very level graded area, grass area for that plane to hopefully regain control before hitting an object. So that is on the sides of the runway and the ends. At your ends, for this facility, it extends 300 feet beyond. So your constraints, looking at the image, down here is the Shenango River. So if you take a shape, you put 300 feet, it's pinned right on the river. So that's what's driving that end. Before it was also a little bit of the obstructions, which is an imaginary surface coming into the runway. And then on the other end, there is a steep cliff right here going from the corner of the runway down to the road, right in here. It's probably a 15-foot drop. So your safety area on that end is pinned right on the top of that hill, and that's what's causing that displacement. So the only out to that, the only fix would be to grade that area, which has to be basically level. About 5% is the maximum slope. That would take relocating or closing the road to do that and restore that threshold to the end, while looking at the obstructions to make sure once you push this threshold, that surface gets lower. It might cause more obstructions to be in the path, which might have to be mitigated. So those are the two main factors, and that's the reason why it is what it is.
Because that's different from
That is
what-
probably pretty
that's-
technical.
No.
That's pretty clear.
Not as technical as I'm
I
gonna
tried to make it simple.
But thank you for that, because that's not what we understood.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitely safe here. So that is #1 priority. Every project with FAA is ranked. So safety, it's called National Priority Ranking. Every project type, and they've got hundreds of codes. The higher your project ranks, the more likely it is going to compete for funding on a discretionary level because you compete nationwide. Higher the number, the more likely the project's going to get funded. So a runway safety or improvement project ranks in the 90s. Like an apron reconstruction job, the FAA doesn't think much of that. It might be a 40 or 50, so it's much lower on the scale. So that's always a factor as well, where your project ranks as far as what the FAA thinks is important, which unfortunately doesn't always align with what you guys think is important.
So, for example, if we posed a project as a runway safety area improvement and just happened during the same project to extend the runway by 300 feet, then that would be a wonderful combination, would it not?
We could look at that. That's a novel idea. The FAA is getting very particular with how you approach, and we've definitely done projects like that. The big sell to the FAA is why do you need the 5,000 feet?
Right.
Typically, it is 500 operations of that critical aircraft, and you have to prove very detailed that your planes that are operating, or you have somebody that wrote a letter of commitment that wants to come to the airport, and Jim can work with the local firms, Shobani and the others that fly into the facility. Hey, if we had that 5,000 feet, that's gonna help your situation. You sell more fuel, you get the planes based here, and revenue at a GA facility is so limited. There's three things. Basically, it's hangar rent, landing fees, which is really rare. Most facilities don't charge landing fees, and you got the fuel sales. That's it. That's all. That's the only streams of revenue. So it's important to get, the GA planes, they don't buy much fuel. It's a little bit of fuel, 20 gallons, 30 gallons. You're not making much.
Right.
The jets take hundreds of gallons
At a higher margin.
at a higher margin, so.
My experience doesn't go back before 2012, and I want to be as diplomatic as I can. Good luck with that. And I'm sure you do some sort of exit survey. But if you were our consultant for 25 years, and you want us to believe that you have all these answers, and why were you given the boot?
We knew that question was coming. I think we,
Well, I'd like to think
to be quite frank, we probably rubbed a couple members the wrong way. They had a different vision. They probably thought we weren't actively involved. A lot of it goes back to this gentleman's question regarding, get everybody in. I think people had the vision that we were working in a vacuum, maybe directly with Don, and people were in the dark of what projects were being completed and what the priorities were. So we can definitely open it up. That's a great idea. I think that's important to get everybody on the same page. That was pretty much the primary reason. Most projects, there were a couple little hiccups with projects. I can't deny that. the program manager who moved on from CNS, he left CNS to another firm, was managing a lot of the Norwich. I was working as a technical lead. So there was also we do have a change in leadership at CNS. I'm still through as the technical lead, but Jim definitely has a new perspective, and we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page moving forward.
I guess if I can just take 1 second and build on that, I've been on your side of the table. And so therefore, what I bring to CNS and what we bring you as a team is that perspective about what are the priorities, what are the needs, how do we, that you were asking about, how do you get the information about the history and bring everybody up to speed? If you want us to come down, not at a committee meeting, come down and convene everybody, absolutely.
Well, I think the bigger point that this committee is struggling with, and both Pete and Jim have been around longer, but this problem has been going on for a long time. I mean, and I think that's some of the frustration that we all feel. And so you were around during a great deal of that struggling, and we still are struggling. And so I don't know if I've heard the key that's going to make a big change here. I don't know what you're saying specifically that it's going. I mean, I believe what
Dave DeBell.
Dave's mentioning is that we don't see the plan, and I think, because like I say, as I remember 2012 when I was just coming to this committee, was that we didn't feel like we did understand where we were going, and each group like yourself will come in and these are my words, paint pie in the sky how they're going to solve these problems and we're going to make progress, and I think that we didn't feel like that was happening. So, and I don't know if you all are convinced.
I wasn't here then. I used to be on Public Works, and I asked too many questions, and they moved it to planning.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair
I
point.
just got on planning recently.
I think that's a fair point, and I think, that was a wake-up call for us, frankly. I think it boils down to what you're talking about with communication.
Keep it fast.
And I think in large part, we usually do a good job with communication. Sometimes it's hard to navigate the different roles and responsibilities of the customers we work with, and we likely weren't doing a good job with that at that time and previous, and maybe resting on our laurels a little bit. But we recognize that. Like I said, it was a wake-up call. We have made a lot of changes internally with leadership, and I think, knowing what we know and knowing what happened, that wouldn't happen again.
Okay.
I think at the time that we did that, when I was here, and I've been through all of this since 2000.
Yeah.
All right. I think it was looking for a fresher point of view
Yeah.
was the bigger change. I don't know that any of the engineering firms are any different than another one.
Well,
All right? But we were with
Let's hope so.
CNS for a long time. So, it was one of those things. So here we are again at the table, and maybe we didn't.
well, I mean,
So-
personally, I don't think that from what I've seen after this next group came in, I didn't see them delivering on their promises of, here's what we're going to do, we're going to check these boxes, we're going to move forward. It just got,
You could ask them, they're next.
And so then, I guess, I don't know how long a period of time we have a contract with these engineering firms, but we'll fire them.
yeah, well,
This is a 5-year agreement,
yeah.
and, communication is not, maybe the better question is how much of that is your responsibility and
How much is
and
ours?
how much do you view it as ours? And, I don't remember any engineer ever being at a meeting at the 3 years I've been here. I don't know whether they've ever come to the steering committee. I used to be on the steering committee, but I didn't know anything about airports, so I sent Matt Giltner, he got a little frustrated, but anyway.
But if you're talking about communication, if you're talking about vetting, if you're talking about qualifying, we're taking the 5-year contract and agreement very seriously. This is the first step of we're bringing in 3 firms to discuss it. So if there's a lack of communication, at least we're starting off very strongly
Well, I think it's
on the first step.
I think it's a lot more than communications. I think it's dropping the ball somewhere along the way.
Well, I think a committee doesn't know what it doesn't know, and so it doesn't get to ask the questions that might be pertinent. And those questions would be prompted by an engineering or a consulting company.
Yeah.
In other words,
Well, that's a good point, about not knowing what you don't know.
Right.
And I
But we
think that
don't know.
we've, just for example, in the couple presentations we've heard today, well, there's this funding source, and there's this grant program, and this, well.
Nobody told us.
Yeah, who's not doing their
I
job?
think the other issue is there's not always been, from my experience looking back at those 15 years, that there was not always a lot of interest in the airport. I think the interest really brought up was part of the master planning process, which we ended off on because there was more involvement and people became, in the county up to speed with it. And then there was the financial look. I mean, we're losing money. That was the key.
That gets
was
people
that
paying
we're eating
attention.
too much into this trust fund, and this is the problem.
Yeah.
And we got to look at, what are you going to do to, bring in revenue and make a change here so we're financially free. So I think those were the changes in the last couple of years. And it was just bad timing. We didn't see that. Maybe we weren't invited. Maybe we should have asked the
We
questions.
had a fixed
that got
base
more
operator
apart.
for many of those
This is
years.
true.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it wasn't costing us any money, so you're talking about a totally different.
Right.
A lot of clients like
Situation.
us to be hands off. They don't like us to go to committee meetings. They like to manage it. But if this team, if everybody wants us to be more involved, we definitely can be.
I think you're gonna find this committee is very engaged, the steering committee is very committed, and between these two groups, I think there's gonna be a lot of changes going forward.
Right, may I suggest that the airport steering committee now is composed and energized to be more helpful to this committee.
Good, we could.
To answer, if you don't know what you don't know, and we all have that,
Well,
we're gonna help with that.
let's build off that.
Very good. All right, very good. Appreciate you coming in. Any other questions?
one other question. If in actuality we considered extending the runway, the only end can be that end of runway 1. So that brings into play that peat bog moss area that
Yeah.
you mentioned, that's
So
bottomless.
how can we do it?
Yeah, now, my question is, do you see, anything can be excavated and filled in, but that's a terrible expense. Do you see any value in the material that would come out of that? In other words, the actual mining of the peat that comes out of that as
Could
a.
ship it to Ireland, they could burn it.
Well,
You might be burning it here, Pete.
your best
As a
situation.
revenue source to help fund.
Yeah, it definitely could be. We'd have to find a market for that and do a little research, to see who would be willing to take that. They used to burn it for fuel.
Well, I mean, it's used in gardening. shops,
Exactly.
used in soil enrichment, this is an agricultural area. I'm not saying that there's a market.
Or I'm just thinking out loud, there's always the envision of, this facility's a playground for rich people. You get that the comment from the public. So why not, if you're tin mining that peat, you could have available for county residents to pick up, like mulch.
Gluten-free, free-range organic.
Exactly. But your key to build that is Mead Pond Road is the problem. And really the showstopper on that last round in preliminary design is that road has to come way out here to get around that safety area at the end and the side. So the road was more of a problem than the runway.
Yeah, we gotta get rid of the road.
So if the road goes away, and there's ways to do that, they maybe could buy
all
these
depends.
parcels, or we look at a connector between Route 12 and Mead Pond to get to these facilities, because the counties might not be interested in purchasing those just because of the history of those parcels, but that's definitely an option. But if you look at the runway extension of about,
Brownfields or what?
what's that?
Are they brownfields?
I don't think they're registered, but it was an old
You'd
concrete
have to
asphalt
look.
factory. You
They
don't
already
know
bought
what's in the
one.
ground.
It's currently
It
vacant.
is.
They already bought one of the property.
Okay.
We bought the concrete.
Okay.
Let's call it
That's
vacant
good.
land.
And so there's one more.
And then, the Adams bought what was Supco, so he's,
Oh, that's part of his.
yeah, so we're
Okay.
no more landlocked problem.
That's great. That's great. So the extension stays out of that peat bog, which is limited right there. That's your best bet, is just to avoid it if you can, and stop that grading before it. I think it's going to go into it a little bit, but you got to minimize it.
Steve, you had one question?
Just one quick question.
'Cause we're getting close to-
I'm here representing the IDA, since I sit on that board or advise that board. We've talked a lot about general aviation, about the airport. What do we do with our industrial development buildings that are there and the potential for more of that at the airport site? Are you guys familiar with doing those kinds of projects?
We've done a little bit, you're talking about, and part of my familiarity, but you're talking about buildings that are on airport property or just off?
They're on county property, just off the airport facility itself.
Okay. So we have worked with different folks to do some redevelopment. We also have a team a small team that they specialize in land use strategies for airports. So they can sort of look around and see what's popular in the region and what makes sense. And they have all kinds of great data and they can help determine what the best uses for those types of facilities might be for the county as a revenue source. So yes, we've done a bit of that.
So you've done economic development work around.
Would you consider that in the scope of your pro bono services?
Well, that would depend on the
Quite
extent of your
frank.
needs.
Yeah.
How's that?
All right.
Well, I guess very simply, if every time we call you, are we gonna get a bill? And I know you're gonna say no, but I don't mean to be that crass about it all, but you know, obviously, we're not experts on this, and you know, the, hey, what about this calls, or,
No, you definitely would not get a bill every time you called. I think I can honestly say that in knowing some of our counterparts in the industry that we probably do the most pro bono work based on what I know about other people's profit margins versus ours, so.
And that would also include attending meetings and things of that nature.
Absolutely.
Jim came to those, okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Don can attest to, you know, we don't show up when there's a project, we work round the year. There's a lot of deadlines, there's a lot of applications that gotta be put in. So the paperwork with the FAA, there's a lot of stuff that Don may need assistance with that we could help out, and we used to help out with. Certifications, you know, grant drawdowns, there's just a lot of different administrative steps. Unfortunately, when you take FAA or state money, there's a lot of paperwork steps that go with it, a lot.
Chris had done a
Always
lot
being
of pro bono work just on removing the trees, and he had done work with the cemetery and with Allen and Taylor, with the nursing home, and with Japani. And that was all pro bono, that was all arranged before we switched.
All right,
So he had, and we didn't get charged for any of that.
all right, very good.
And what we were trying to do was we had some money left over, we were trying to get from the resurfacing of the runway to get that contractor to sublet the removing of the trees. And so that's why all that prep work was done. And he said, no, because we had enough money to cover it.
Because the runway job came on time, under budget.
Oh, I appreciate that, yep. All right, very good, thank you so much for your time, and,
Thank you very much.
Jim, do you have a card by chance, or?
I'm so new, I don't have cards yet. But if you, let me offer this to you. If you'd like to write it down, my mobile phone number
Sure.
Well, we're gonna need it too for notes. We
is
got one, no, I know.
315
Passing them out.
243
243.
7428.
Sure.
That's open 24/7, 365.
And that's Jim.
Dolan.
Dolan.
When I get back, so.
And Chris's last name?
Brubeck, B-R-U-B-A, there you go.
Brubeck, oh, there you go. As in Dave?
There you go.
Yeah.
no,
Not really.
yeah.
I've always
Very
heard
good.
that
Okay.
connection, but I,
Good luck with you.
Hey,
Thanks,
Brubeck,
Chris, I
I
appreciate it.
know, wasn't he voted? Steve would know.
That's
What
fine,
was
I'll
Dave
take-
Brubeck, piano?
No, he did, he's a horn player.
Horn
Take
player?
five.
All right.
Yeah.
Trumpet.
Yeah.
All
The
right,
old
good
5/4
to see you.
beat, yep.
thank you all. Have a
Take care.
great
Yep.
day.
Thanks for your time.
You done.